And this is just typical fantasy novel shit. If you stand still long enough, you will probably get dragged into a plot to overthrow a kingdom. What's up, book nerds? I'm Lucky's Universe, and in this week's video, we are going to be talking about some of my favorite book duologies to date. If you don't already know, a book duology is a series made up of 2 books, aka my favorite kind of series. Man, when I was younger, I was able to smash out like 6, 7, 8 books in a series all at once, but now my attention span just doesn't allow for that. I love duologies because I feel like you get more of the story and more of the characters without the possibility of falling into that dreaded middle book trap where nothing really happens in the middle book. It's just all setting up for the 3rd book. This will be a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't read any of these books, never you fear, you can still tag along. Also, because I feel like this will come up, none of these books have any spice in them. I'm not a spicy gal, and these are all YA novels, so if you want spice, go take a cold shower and come back. Without further ado, let's get into it. We're starting off with a duology that I honestly don't know how it isn't more mainstream, but it's the Dance of Thieves duology by Mary E. Pearson. It's set in the same universe as the author's fairly popular Remnant Chronicles. This series is about a young Queensguard who is on a mission to infiltrate and take down a family of so-called outlaws who have for generations occupied a large trading center called Hell's Mouth that is apparently starting to encroach on other kingdoms. The Queensguard, Kazi of Brightmist, is a soldier turned street thief who meets the young ruler of Hell's Mouth, Jace Ballinger, as they are both captured by traders and have to rely on each other to escape and survive. They develop a romantic relationship while on the run together without knowing each other's true identity. But when they find their way back to Hell's Mouth and, by proxy, Jace's family, the truth is revealed, and now Jace and Kazi have to navigate their rocky relationship. The good thing about this duology is that you can read it without having read the previous Remnant Chronicles series. I haven't read the Remnant Chronicles. In fact, I didn't even know that they existed before I started reading Dance of Thieves. And I understood everything in these books perfectly fine, although I did notice that there were some references that I think hark back to the previous books, and then some old characters make a reappearance in these. But I feel like the author does a good job of explaining this to the reader, so I didn't feel lost or confused at all. I fell in love with these books the moment I started reading them. In terms of world building, it's pretty light on, which isn't an issue for me, but if you're after something more complex, maybe it's not for you. The characters are definitely the highlight. This has very much found family vibes. The first book focuses mainly on Jace and Kazi's relationship, but I did like that there was plenty of non-romantic plot thrown in, so I didn't feel like I was reading a straight up romance novel. As for the second book, I won't give anything away, but it did not disappoint. So if you want fantasy, romance, a political subplot, and more, I would definitely give Dance of Thieves a shot. And we're back to the age-old struggle of find the hair on my face. Plus the fact that this is Australia and it's really freaking hot and all of my hair is sticking to my face. Now, if Dance of Thieves is light on world building, let's go hard in the opposite direction with a duology that has some of the most rich and complex world building I've read so far. This is the Beast Made of Night duology, written by Nigerian-American author Tochi Onyebuchi. Beast Made of Night has a fantasy world inspired by Nigeria, where the sins of people manifest as tattoos on their skin, and then a mage draws that out in the form of a shadow beast, and then a person called an Aki eats the shadow beast and absorbs the sin. Because Aki are made to bear the sins of multiple people over several years, most go mad and die young. This world, in particular the main city of Kos, is fascinating because it operates on this caste-based society in which Aki are the most important tool to society, and yet they are the lowest class. The noble classes are known to have this clear, unblemished, perfect skin, and people say it's because, you know, rich people have no sins, but the Aki know the truth. They know that the reason their skin is so clear is because they are the only people with enough money to pay Aki to absorb their sins. So the story follows our main character, whose name is Taj, and he is an Aki who is a little bit different from the rest. Yeah, you heard me, he's not like other boys. When an Aki eats a sin, it forms a tattoo on their skin which fades over time, but Taj's tattoos never fade. At the beginning of the story, Taj is hired to eat the sin of the King of Kos, which manifests as a great dragon. In this world, the larger and fiercer the beast of your sin, the eviler and greater your sin is. So the fact that the king's sin manifested as a dragon means he did something bad. And now Taj knows it. Because of this, after Taj eats the sin, he then gets arrested and ends up becoming the personal Aki to the king. But while in his service, Taj manages to get wrapped up in a plot to overthrow the king. And this is just typical fantasy novel shit. If you stand still long enough, you will probably get dragged into a plot to overthrow a kingdom. So obviously, world building is the highlight of this series. But I also want to point out that even though the author is male and the main character is male, these books have a seriously strong cast of female characters. I was worried at first that this series was going to follow the age-old tale of like male hero running around doing male hero stuff, and then every woman that he comes across is just like a plot device for him to sleep with. But instead, the female characters became Taj's close friends and support system, and he acknowledges that he would never have been able to achieve anything in the story without them. I would highly recommend this duology if you want rich world building and just a classic overthrow the evil king plotline. And I would also recommend the audiobook because it was really good. If you love the Red Queen series and are looking for something similar, I've got your back. Presenting The Crown of Coral and Pearl duology by Mara Rutherford. The main character, Noor, lives in a village bound by sea, ruled by the kingdom of Ilara, who forbids them from setting foot on land. The only hope of ever leaving the village comes in the form of a once-in-a-lifetime ceremony where the most beautiful girl in the village will be chosen to wed the next crown prince of Ilara. Noor and her twin sister Zadie are the most beautiful girls in the village, but because Noor has a small scar on her face, everyone just assumes Zadie is going to be the one who gets to leave the village and wed the crown prince. And this is really sad because Noor has always dreamed of leaving her village and seeing the mainland. However, tragedy befalls Zadie, making her unable to make the trip to the mainland, so Noor is sent in her place to impersonate her sister. On the mainland, she meets her future husband, Prince Seren, who turns out to be cruel and unforgiving and just totally an all-round terrible guy. But then she also meets his far more hospitable brother, Prince Talon. And you can kind of guess how the plot unfolds from there. This duology is full of court intrigue, scandals and plots, sibling rivalry, rebellion, and romance. The reason I say that this is similar to the Red Queen series is because the dynamic between Noor and Talon and Seren is very similar to the Red Queen dynamic between Mare and Maven and Cal. And that's a lot of names, I almost didn't remember that. I love how lighthearted this duology is. And I'm not saying that like nothing bad happens. Bad stuff happens. Like there's drama, trust me, but it's not overwhelming. It's not all consuming. It's a really straightforward YA fantasy romance, and it just doesn't make you think super hard. And the romance is just, it's so vanilla. It's so straight. But I kind of love it. Maybe the straights do deserve rights. For our final duology today, I want to talk about the Holocron duology by Zoraida Cordova. This is stunning. Why does nobody talk about this more? Let's set the scene. Renata, the main character, she's a Moria, which is a person with magic. There are different kinds of Moria in the kingdom of Port Leones, and Renata is one of the rarest types. She's a Rabari, which means she is someone who can steal memories. Although the magic of the Moria is forbidden in Port Leones, Renata was captured as a child and forced to serve the crown. And she carried out a terrible siege called the King's Wrath, which resulted in the deaths of thousands of her own people. Years later, and now Renata works for the Whispers, which is a group of freedom fighters and Moria who are working to take down the crown. However, when her boyfriend Des is captured, Renata has to insert herself back into court to try and rescue him, which just so happens to bring her face to face with her greatest enemy, Prince Castian. This duology has the perfect blend of world building, romance, and plot. For a book without spice, the romance is sizzling. I was screaming, crying, throwing up the entire time. Both books have amazing individual story arcs as well as a good overarching arc. Overarching arc? Is that a word? Overarching arc. I'm overthinking this. And the author does an amazing job of writing grief and loss and struggle, but also writing like peace and happiness and love. I absolutely love Zoraida Cordova. I love her Brooklyn Brujas series. That's an urban fantasy trilogy. You should definitely check it out, especially if you like sort of the Mortal Instruments or Cruel Prince. I feel like you definitely like it. And if you're looking for a duology that's gonna suck you in and keep you hooked, the Holocron is where it's at. And that concludes this video of my favorite duologies. I hope that this has convinced at least some of you to read these books, or maybe you've already read them and you just like to hear people talk about them. That's cool too. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, go check that out. I post some pretty cool stuff on there, and I will also leave a link to my Goodreads account and my Instagram account down below so you can keep up with what I'm reading. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you later. I want to talk about the Holocron duology by Zoraida Cordova. I've said this name a million times. Holocron duology by Zoraida Cordova. Yes! Got it! Nailed it.